celebrity or was not a big name. So I had obviously my doubts. And then these stories came from different backdrops. There were stories of villages, there were stories of small towns that I grew up in, there were stories of Delhi and Bombay and the news organization that I was working in. So it was basically really a mixed bag of my experiences. So why would anybody be interested in my experiences or the stories or the characters that I knew them as. But so I went to this, though I work with a publishing house and a largely fairly big publishing house, but I did not go to that publishing house. I went to a small publisher because I was like, who will invest money in me? Why will anybody publish? And B, I think I was only writing for family and friends. So like Apurva said, I think in my case, family and friends really got together in supporting me. And I also used to blog, so I had a good network of bloggers who were connected to me. So when my publisher put up the post for the first time that, okay, Anu Singh Choudhury's short story collection is actually going for pre-order, you won't believe this, but for the first post got some 300 shares. I mean, I have no clue who was sharing them. But these were really family and friends and people that we had reached out to, people we were interacting with through internet, and people who believed in the stories probably more than me, more than I did. And then Neela Scarf went on to become the highest pre-booked title, Hindi title of that year. In fact, there was no, and it was one of the 5 top pre-booked titles on Flipkart, and we had, so while I was saying that let's just do 200 copies, we already had a pre-order of 1600. But it's, I think, it still amazes me how it worked. Natasha knows about it. There was no active social marketing really that we did, apart from just sharing it on Facebook. I'm not even active on Twitter. But it just, word of mouth. I think one person was reading the story and they were sharing it, and then people wanted to publish excerpts, and those stories just went viral. And so we all find that one person who will guide you through and who will have more confidence in you than yourself. So it's really about finding that one right person and then getting into that network of the right kind of people who will give you that reassurance that we look for.
But also one of the things that is happening here is that if you take Manika's book, or if you had taken your book to a big publisher, you would be in queue for your book to be read for months, maybe years. The chances are pretty slim that the book would make it, which kind of makes it look like the market has no space for a book like this. And yet when you publish it yourself and you use a not very reputed media like Facebook to put it out there, tell us about that. How these characters come, how much they are connected to your personal experiences, where do they separate from?
This is it's autobiographical. Even though it's a work of fiction, there are different characters, but people insisted it was my experience. And no amount of argument could convince them otherwise. But as I write, as I've written my second book, as I work on my third, and also on my fourth, I have a very clear idea of what I'm doing now, which is that when I create a character, as the story progresses, it begins to have a personality of its own. It wants to pull the story in a particular direction. It wants to do certain things in a certain way, and which is why each character in the book or in a story is distinctive. If they were all my stories, then they would all be alike. But in this case, each character has his or her own personality, And after a point, I have to sit. I am thinking more than I'm writing. Because the character has to say to me, now this will happen next, and that is when I write. When I was working on this book, and this book has been far more rewarding than my first book in my own personal experience. I remember walking down somewhere and someone called out to a Kalpana, and I stopped and I looked around and I had to tell myself, the Kalpana I am with is actually in my mind. There is no Kalpana here. But for me, the characters become so real when I'm working with them, and in a way they're finding expression of not only my personal experiences, more than that, they're finding expressions of the things I have seen around me and what I have understood was around me, which may not be true. My perception may not be true of what has actually happened, but my perception finds a way in expressing their story. For example, the third book I'm working on, there's a story which I came to a dead end, and there was no way it was moving. And after 2 years, I just left. And fortunately now we have computers, so you just leave that file, and you do other things, and you can pick it up whenever you feel like it. And 2 years, I had a chance conversation with my brother, and he told me that some woman screamed when she saw a dog, and that scream, it's not the woman there, it was not the dog there, it was that scream that got me back to that story, and I could complete it, and it's completely in character of what I am trying to say. So it's not my story, it is, I don't know, I can't explain. It's like, and when I write, I have a very strong feeling at this particular time that the book has begun to sing. Now, how does the book sing? But in my mind, the story has found a rhythm. It has found its own life, and it is going to meet its own destiny. And that way, I'm not as if a puppeteer, playing with puppets. They are real people in my mind. So real that if you call out to them, I will turn back and listen.
Okay. Who in 2 words or 3 words simply said, and I quote, "The idea is not the illustration. The illustration is the idea." Unquote. That's what truly makes you transcend physicality and float in a state of existence which is your own. That is what is otherwise descriptive writing or descriptive expression or emulation of reality is no art. It's skill. But the right combination of that intuitive instinct and the right technique for its expression transforms it into the realizational experience. Keep it up.
Thank you, Professor Lochan, for putting it into words. Manika was struggling, and Anu was sitting there, and she was nodding very, very vigorously because all of that is happening to her as well. She's probably 6 months ahead of you in terms of audience reactions because her book has been out for a while, and she's got people telling her what is happening in her book, and then you read that and say, "Oh, okay, is that what I was doing?" And Professor Lochan, of course, he's.
Natasha, I forgot to thank you. I didn't have words. You brought so many memories back. And I was feeling so low that I didn't even know that I would be able to talk.
That's me, I'm the memory keeper. I go up to everyone and tell them what they were doing 20 years ago.
In fact, she said, Natasha Badhwar. I said, that rings a bell. She tried to show me a photograph. I said, when I see her, I will realize who she is. And when I walked in, I said, yeah, I know her.
That brings us to Sumant. Sumant, you've been a lawyer, you've been an entrepreneur, you've, in terms of worldly achievements, you've done a third party creative entrepreneur has to step in and say, I'm going to do this. I don't know if there's a business model here, but I'm going to do this because I believe, because, we want to touch the world of literary creation in some way. Your role is another very important part of the chain in the creative process. Tell us about the Kumaon Literary Festival. What inspired you to start it?
Well, thank you, Natasha. But first of all, allow me to thank Manika for extending me the invitation to be a part of this very special evening. I feel honored and privileged for being in the company of such esteemed people. Before I answer your question, I also wanted to make one comment, in fact, to supplement what Apurv mentioned about self-publishing, because I had somewhat of a similar experience as well. I have done 2 books. My second book was a coffee table book, which was very aspirational, I must say. And when I sat with the publisher and the editor, they said, we like the book, but we would like to do 3 things. One, change the cover, introduce these 2 chapters, and then we'll do it. And I said, look, the 2 chapters that you insist that I should do, I feel that they would be entirely not in sync with what the spirit of the book is, and therefore that would be a disservice to the book and the work that has gone behind it, and would immensely compromise the whole product. And the fact that the picture was special, in my opinion, I thought that this would touch the hearts of the people. They refused to do it, and I said, okay, I'll do it myself, and I got it self-published. The book was priced at 8,900 rupees per book in a box. I went to Dr. Karan Singh with the dummy. He looked at the cover and he said, you don't have to say anything, I'll do the book. I'll release it for you. And that gave me the courage to go and do the book. I got the maximum reviews ever for any coffee table book, and I sold it in 6 months, 1,000 copies. Although, the book also had some special moments. Sherry Player had written the forward for it. The proceeds were going to a charity, and that's why I aimed it at 8,900 rupees. But the fact is that I believed in the book. If you believe in your book, and you have the courage and conviction to do it, it will happen. To answer your question, Natasha, 2 points. First of all, this is going to be the first edition, so we haven't really done it in the past. We've done some precursors to this, but this is really going to be the first edition in October. And it is not for profit, so there's no real business model to it, but there is a sustainable model to it. So we have been planning this now for 6 months, and we are planning it from the perspective that this is going to be there for at least 10 years. And the effort that we've put in for the last 6 months is to lay the foundation for something which we know we will be able to build for the next 10 years. For it to sustain, and that is why a lot of hard work is going into it. Now, what inspired or motivated, this is a very long story and we will leave it for some other occasion, but I would just probably provide one comment that in my travel for my work in the last 10 to 12 years around the world, and I've worked in 20-25 countries as senior international consultant for the World Bank and IMF Group, I realized that in this country, unfortunately, we do not invest enough in promoting art, culture, literature, theatre, in particular the private sector. And I felt that we have too much of a reliance on the government and the private sector, although there are a number of people in this country who do want to have the will and the ability to do it, but unfortunately do not really have the support system, or perhaps sometimes even the energy or the will or the right kind of models to do it. At least I felt that I should be doing something, and that is why I decided that I should dedicate the rest of my life to doing something which I feel is important for the development of the community system in any country. As I keep saying, and this is one of the important parts of Kumaon Literary Festival, is that one day before that we are inviting the Prime Minister's think tank member, Dr. Vivek Roy, because we want to give a presentation to him on what I believe a smart city or village should be. All, of course, brick, mortar, steel, it's important. But what adds soul to any smart city is the community and the culture of the people and how they engage with art, culture, literature, which should be so integrated and visible that it should be effortless and seamless in terms of how It is a part of your lifestyle. And I'm doing my small model in that village. So Kumaon Literary Festival is actually a small part of a larger effort to produce a small model in that village, Thanachuli. So Literary Festival to that extent is special because we are not just building the festival, we've actually created the infrastructure for these things to happen over the last 3 to 4 years. In a small village in the middle of nowhere, set in a mountain top, facing the Himalayas, lovely people, lovely weather, and we built the hotel first, started doing these art retreats, writers retreats, food retreats, etc., etc. Hopefully she would also be there. The whole spirit of this is to create another platform of a very different kind, very inclusive. I can talk about this for hours and hours, but I will leave it for you to move on and ask me any question you may have.
Yeah, I'd like a book of short stories on women's lives, and you've gone to management schools and communication schools, and read out those stories to audiences that you didn't have any, you never imagined would connect to stories like that. What does that experience do?
Somehow I feel that we all live with our own pain, sorrows, grief, happiness, pleasures, joys, nostalgia, memories, all these emotions. And when a storyteller is coming to you and sharing a story of ABC, somebody random, you know that there is something which is connecting there. Like when I was reading Manika's book, there were portions, especially when Kalpana is talking about her home, her ancestral home, I knew it was my village, my home that I can't go back to. When Natasha mentioned that, Natasha called me up and told me that, okay, we're... And even though if there's no such connect, you know that there's something which is finding its validation there, which is finding its answer there. So when you are actually taking your story to these uncharted territories, you're also taking your readers through it. And when you as a writer are trying to look for an answer, you're not looking for answers or solutions in the space at all. I don't know the backdrop. But when you're creating, when you're looking at those spaces, unknown spaces, you realize that there's so many parts of you, there's so many shades of you which are coming out through these characters.
I said I would. In fact, it's wonderful to see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 true committed people who are not interested in the worldly glory of success, but sharing thoughts, ideas, experiences of Swanaha Sukha that pleases your true inner sensibilities and your spirit. This is also, I would call it, ultimately.
I'm going to go to Apurv from here.
Sorry if I don't offend it.
That's a thought, but certainly. And we have all seen the worst sin. It's not like that. It's not. Things interact when you are actually, indulging in the creative process of writing.
He's the chief ticket inspector at in the railways based out of Nagpal. And he does paintings, and they are brilliant. He just does Indian railway platforms in different places. That's what he does. Lots of things. That I own that. So that's owned by me, and various imitations keep coming up. And she's in the railways too. आजकल कुछ railways के पानी में कुछ है. There's something happening.
किताबें भी ट्रेन में बैठे पढ़ी हैं.
देखिए. So. Creative process. My book, by the way, just to bring it out in the open a bit, is it's a combination of sex and humor with a lot of ethnicity. So it's all about the characters. In fact, characters bhi hain, So I think I encourage people to kind of go beyond that, and I subscribe to a lot of what Manika said. Of course, what Professor Lochan said and Anu said, even Sumant in his thing. I think everything is born out of where you begin and where you observe and what your personal experience are as well, and it's always a combination of these things that move you. I remember reading and thinking, what a load of rubbish. And I think that's one of the things that I found while writing is so true. That after a while, and as Kalpana mentioned, somebody calls Kalpana and you turn it, as Manika mentioned, you call Kalpana and you turn around, it happens to you. When you write, you don't really know where that story is going to go, what that character is going to do. You imbue the character suddenly with a surprising characteristic, a surprising thing that you could have seen a taxi guy use, and suddenly you will impart that, and you never knew you remembered that until actually it comes out on paper. So I think that's what, in a way, writing does to you. I used to write a lot in school, college, and my IMA. I was always on the editorial magazine board, etc. And then corporate life, I think you get used to writing reports, and any creativity kind of goes out of the window. And I've had various roles, various countries, etc. And luckily, when I came back, I had a bit of a break. I came back 9 years ago after 11 years abroad. I had a bit of a break, and I began watching Hindi movies again, much to the delight of my wife. And then I decided, you know what? I should communicate to the rest of the world that Hindi movies now are interesting. They've gone beyond the Mele Mein Bichhade Hue Bhai and the